Well, we're talking about receiving one another today. We just finished up with not speaking against one another, so might need to go back there too. Okay, we're on page 39 of your books, lesson 10, receiving one another. Let's see. Before we get going, let's see. Mickey, Carrie, listen, open in prayer, please. Hey, before we move into lesson 10, is anything, any other questions, any other thoughts anyone had on not speaking against one another? We didn't get all the way through the lesson last time, but as usual, I got to get through everything that I definitely circled that I wanted to cover from that lesson book. Do you may have anything else on not speaking against one another from last class before we move on? Okay. So let's turn to Romans 15. Somebody gets there, if they can read verses 5 through 7, please. Okay, the last verse says, therefore accept, or some of your versions may have said receive one another, just as Christ also accepted us to the glory of God. So through these verses, you can see we're commanded, and as we're going to talk in this whole lesson, and what all that means in regards to accepting one another. The verse 5 kind of hints at what that's all about. If you notice, it says in verse 5, it says to be of the same mind with one another, according to Christ Jesus. It says one another. So when it says one another, it's talking about all Christians, talking about each other as Christians. It doesn't point out specific people. It's supposed to be of same mind. Supposed to accept all, accept each other, just as we are as Christians. So when it comes to relationships in the church, just as a little intro here, everyone is to be included. We really shouldn't have a distinction between insider and outsider, or the haves or have-nots. I have been to a couple places before, and have been to groups where that is a little more purposeful. I don't think we're talking about that today. I don't think this church does that at all, but I think it can be done unintentionally as well, and that's something we really need to watch out for. As the book points out here, we're all one in Christ Jesus. One of the unique qualities of Christianity, it really doesn't matter where you came from, really doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter how you speak, or if you can speak, can't speak. It doesn't matter what background you come from. Everyone in the eyes of God is equal. So when we learn to embrace that as God is embracing it, then that's when we can become the church we need to be. One of the primary differences between growing churches and those that are shrinking is how they treat these new members. I love this quote. Most churches can bring people in the front, but growing churches figure out how to keep them from going out the back. So there's a couple keys, and that's what we're going to learn today, to understanding how we bring people into the fellowship of local church. And me and Sam are really having a hard time, or the health department's really having a hard time. I'm sure all you guys are, of hiring people now. There's a recruiting, okay, and then there's a retention, okay. I think sometimes we're great, sometimes at getting people here. Sometimes the retention isn't always maybe as good as we need to. So I'm not saying here, I'm just saying in general. They're both just as important. It doesn't really matter if we get them through the door if we don't do a good job of encouraging them to stay and be here, and accepting them as part of our group. So we're going to talk about accepting one another or receiving one another, considering one another, and being devoted to each other. It's the three keys to this lesson today, and we'll look at each. So if we go over, let's start in your thought questions down there. We're going to do a little different. We normally do it here. We're going to move into some of these questions real quick today. Let's go over to Galatians chapter 3, verse 26 through 29. Very good. So what are some of the distinctions it says there? That doing this in the body. Yes. What was that? Okay. Okay. Very good. Jew or Greek. I think that could be pertaining to different things. If you look at some of the commentaries, they say it could be nationality. It could be race. Something is very different between your backgrounds. It's more of that's more of a background issue. So Jew or Greek, very good. What else in there does it say? Slave nor free. What do we think that means? Slave nor free. Okay. Very good. That's what I had. Economic status. Very good. What's another one? Okay. Male or female. Why is that such a big one? Male or female? How's male or female different then than today? Back then, as in prior in older times versus today. What's the difference? How society has developed between male and female? Okay, so the right. Okay, so very good. Very good. Okay. So if we look at roles, male and female, I still think that kind of relates to what Tara said. What is some of the differences between male and female roles in the church? Okay. 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 But okay, very good. But I think we got to be, once again, I don't think this congregation does this, but I think we got to be careful in church, or we don't let it drift into what we consider male versus female, and females as second-class citizens even in the church. If you look in the Bible, it may look like their role is much smaller. Whenever that's just so not the case in regards to so many things they do that are not even talked about, that external outside the church. They do so many things also internally in the church to make sure things are taken care of, in, whether it be related to building or younger children, or being a helper to their husbands. They're such a vital role, and God tells us to treat them as such. We're not going to spend a ton of time on that, but I want to point that one out because I think that's a big one. I don't think that's how the church here views that relationship, but I think that's a big problem, whether it be in societies that think women are second-class citizens, or whether it's this country, that still views roles that way, that men are the dominating, and the women are supposed to be under them. That's just there is roles there that God's created, but it's not supposed to be that domineering thing there. It is, but we are considered fellow heirs, and God's telling us to accept and treat the women as such, treat each other as such. Okay, very good, very good. So, main point we take away from that, we really shouldn't be creating distinctions in the church. There are going to be differences. There are going to be physical differences, whether it be from background or male, like I said, or male and female, or how our status is in life. To God, they are all the same. We are when we are Christians, we are all have one goal, and that's to get to heaven. We'll talk more about that, helping each other in that regard here in a second. Anything else on 3:26 through 29? Okay. Let's go to Mark chapter 16. Somebody read verse 15, 16. Verse we all know very well. Okay, when I read the verse before, I thought it was more. I always think of that as that's a teaching to me, to go into all the world and teach. But now it's being used here as what point? It's not much about the speaker. It's about who the audience is, and who is the audience here. All. So we're not distinguishing whether Dad was talking about in his lesson last time, going to China. Distinguishing where we're going to which country we go to, which nationality, poor, rich. This is saying the gospel. This is the Great Commission is for all. So to whom were the apostles to preach? It says every creature. So anything else on that? All creation there. Very good. Very good. Over in Romans 3:23, if you remember, once again, verse everybody here should know well. Let's think of the point of all this. It says, "For all sin and fall short of the glory of God." So if we're all lumped in to the sin category, we're all lumped into all falling short. And the punishment for that sin, the wages of that sin, is going to be death. Everyone needs the gospel. Everybody needs the good news of salvation. And there's really no barrier, whether culturally, language, skin, nation group, that's going to be that really, we have the authority to exclude from that. God is saying everybody's entitled to that. Something the Jews had a hard time getting through the brain whenever Christ went to the cross. Whenever Jesus did go to the cross, all the distinctions ended. There was no more Jew or Gentile anymore. And that was a hard concept for the people of God in the Old Testament to get their mind wrapped around. So if all distinctions end at the cross, they have to end with us here and how we treat anybody that walks through that door and how we edify and build each other up. There should be no distinction for us as well. Okay, anything else on Mark 16, 15, 16? Very good. Absolutely. Okay, let's roll over to Acts chapter 6. I'm probably not going to read. I'm going to read. I do want to read all of Acts chapter 6. We probably won't do all of Romans 15. I do want to get into that too. But I do want to read Acts chapter 6. It's only 15 verses. If somebody doesn't care to read Acts chapter 6 when they get there. And somebody just pick right up when Mickey leaves off. Okay, so what's going on here in the church here? There's a complaint that's arising between who? Okay. Somebody give me somewhat of a distinction here between those two, please. Okay. Okay. Okay? In what way? They were getting overlooked how? Okay? Does anybody say specifically food? Okay? The New American Standard does as well. So we're being overlooked in the daily serving of foods. Anybody else have that translation? Okay? So they were definitely being overlooked. So as you guys can imagine, this is two sets of minds here that are that it appears that the Hellenistic Jews, I'm assuming, were probably going, like Mickey said, to the Hebrews here, and were confronting them. Whenever somebody confronts you and tells you don't like the way this is going on, that can lead to some issues, and especially if you're getting kind of called out on it. We see. I'm sure there was something else said, or something. We don't see the dialogue that goes on here. All we know is in verse 2, what happens right after there's a dispute. A solution between two people of different mindsets, different backgrounds, different thoughts. It says the 12. Of course, they had leadership. They had leadership there. They had leadership of the apostles there, but the apostles did not force them into this. So they summoned the congregation. It says it is not desirable for us to neglect. It is desirable for us to neglect the word of God in order to serve tables. So they asked the congregation. They didn't do it for them. It says, "Brethren, select what? 7." Okay, and we consider these men kind of like what today? Consider them kind of like deacons. They're put in charge of a specific task. And what was going to be their task here? Very good. Making sure these widows are taken care of. But notice the key words there. He's saying select from among you. He's telling them to do it. They did it immediately. And then it says, we will devote ourselves to prayer and to the ministry of the word. It says we. Okay? Remember, this congregation, although of different mindset, different background, definitely some different issues going on here. They all come together on one ground. Okay? And that verse 4, that ground is to the ministry of the word and to God and to prayer. So yes, that they have many different things that they could have just absolutely just started arguing, got heated over right there, physically on this earth, earthly differences. But they had a spiritual common ground there, and they were going to solve the issue they had right there. They did not care about the other person's status or background. They cared about their brother and sister. And that they wanted a problem to take care of, and that's something I very much see out of this congregation. When I see things that may arise there, I see us get on board, get it taken care of. Even things as small as somebody's an elderly person here needing shrubbery things taken care of, or landscaping or something like that. I'll see. I'll see Sam or somebody send a text and say, we need to just get together Saturday and do this or something. And usually about 8 to 20 respond and say, I'm there, we'll take care of it. There was one morning we were just going to, what was it about a year ago when we did that clean out over here in the shed. Well, we sent it out, and I'm sure they're expecting 10 or less or whatever. They even had the kids come out. I think we had like 25 there, so we got it done in what we thought was going to be like 2 hours, maybe 30 minutes. Everybody's like, "What are we going to do?" So a couple of us had different wives that got together, thinking the men are going to be out there for a while, and then a couple of the guys got together and did some stuff afterwards. So anyway, so that whenever you got a congregation on the same page in regards to things like that, to not overlook things. You got a congregation that's willing to accept all things and get things done. anything else on Acts 6 in regards to this congregation, in regards to how we are to act and related to how this congregation was acting here? Very good. Very good. Very good. And we could have stopped at verse 7, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to keep on reading verse 8 to show they didn't talk about the others as much as they talked about Stephen. I wanted to show that they made some good choices and who they picked as men. They come together. They obviously knew each other well enough to know which guys would be the best to do it. And Stephen, obviously in chapter 7 8, showed off his character greatly with how he was administering all these tasks he was given. Absolutely. So very, very good. Part of your group. Yeah, very good. And other than what Mickey said earlier, is there anything else that particularly causes you to be in the Hellenistic bucket versus just native Hebrew? Okay. Okay, so I think it's clear there's very much a definite distinction here, and like Michael said, it's hard to. I guess we're under the assumption if they're all Greek names that they could be all Greek men, but I guess in text we don't technically know where each of these people came from, their background, all the names that are mentioned here, but I think we include for sure that part that chunk of the group for sure is. correct. That I'm guessing there's been some. I'm guessing there's been some times they've been well, maybe they felt slighted before in regards to the group they're in or something like that. So the widows just came to the forefront here, and that was getting the point. But that might make it all the more special, knowing that it could have come from a spot that was a little bit where it shouldn't have come from, if that's the case. And they still resolved it on a spiritual ground here. Came from a physical nature where we're like people get angry with each other, they get upset, they don't always agree with things going on, but they came together here on spiritual ground, on God's terms.
Yeah, how much more graceful is it if the three just work out outright?
Yeah. Correct.
The conclusion was, yeah, they're probably a little out of line, but what can we do to bring it all together and fix the issue?
Right.
Like, it probably makes it more graceful.
Absolutely.
And I think the last lesson is Ephesians 4:26. Again, if we don't sin, we're always going to agree. We're going to get mad at each other sometimes. Fix it.
Very good. Very good. Anything else on Acts 6? We'll move on to Romans 15. Okay, we're not going to read all Romans 15. Let's see. Or 14 and 15. Does anybody want to give me a little bit of background on what's going on in these chapters? Romans 14 and 15. That's a good question. Does anybody know that this is new converts here? I get the impression this is just different belief. Correct. But sometimes weak in the faith has been interpreted as new converts. So I didn't actually look at I didn't go in there and look at the back to the Greek on that. So. I don't have that answer for you, Carol, on that. Okay, so weak or not, what's the main issue they got going on here in chapter 14 and 15? Okay, so what group's going to have issue with the eating problems? Jews, and why? Huh? Okay, well, yeah. Let's not get technical in the Old Testament. The actual what they do and don't do. They have some old traditions that they have major issues with, which we already got a little problem with that. Why? We're now under what? Okay, so it's still hard to break cultural background. These guys aren't perfect. So what are the Gentiles doing here? Okay. All right.
Any problem with it?
Okay. So the disagreement is over the fact that they're eating these meats. Now, what do these two bodies of people do here? What is the resolution? Is there a resolution? Okay, and whose advice was that? Who gave them that advice? Very good, Paul. Okay, so did Paul go and tell Gentiles, don't be eating pork ever again? Don't ever touch it ever again. I mean, if that's a problem, I've been sinning for a long time. I love some pork. So what is the issue here? Very good. Do you care more about your brother? I like that. Very good. Very good. Care more about your brother than you care about your rights. Okay? So, if there is a major issue somebody has, and it's not something that God is condemning or condoning, okay? But a major issue they have, just from whatever background they have, are we going to sit there and just rub that issue right in their face? He's not saying you can't go do this. He's just saying, why would you stir the pot? Because this is your brother. It's causing these people this much of a problem. Do you really care so much about what's going in your belly right now versus your brother and how it's affecting their spiritual situation, their attitude? The resolution, don't let such physical petty differences cause division among brethren. From a cultural background, like I said last time, Dad was talking about China. I'm sure there's so many differences among Christians around the world for things that they grew up with that we're not used to. You probably got to be careful with what you do over there, what you do, what you don't do, depending on which country you're in, how you say certain things. You don't want to offend your brother accidentally or whatever. Especially if you know something that's a trigger for that person, like in regards to just something that they grew up around. At the same time, obviously that goes out the door when we're talking about a spiritual issue. If there's a brother or sister that has a issue that is in contrary to God's word, and it's offending them that you're acting in such a way that God's telling you to do, well, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just a cultural difference here, a problem with something they grew up around that they don't believe is right. There's no, like I said, whether God's condoning or condemning here, that's kind of beside the point. How much do you care about your brother? And that's all part of receiving one another. Anything else on Romans 15? That's the main gist. Right.
And so I think, I wish I could think of a modern day example, but I think some of it goes to background, like, what are we turning from when we become a Christian? And maybe that thing, like you said, is a trigger for us, and we need to stay extra far away from it and not go anywhere near it, whereas another Christian with a different background might not have turned from that same thing. And so just being understanding of one another's background, and if something is triggering or tempting for another Christian, just helping them stay away from it versus trying to explain why it's okay to do it or vice versa.
Very good. Anything else? Okay. Just got a couple minutes. Really quickly, let's go over to Hebrews chapter 2. In verse 9, we'll read a couple of these really quickly. This is just going and beating the point home regarding receiving, accepting one another that we've already talked about, but wanted to go over a few of these. Hebrews 2:9.
We see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, and suffered in death, found glory and honor, and he, by the grace of God, take death for everything.
Okay, Sam, if you don't care to read, since it's a very similar verse, also Titus 2:11 through 14, please. Very good. So although Christ didn't, although there'll be many who reject God's offer of salvation, when Christ went on the cross, He went on the cross for everybody, for the sins of the world. So when God says in Titus 2:11, "For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men," God's grace is for everyone, not just a few. The Old King James Version says that God is no respecter of persons. Why would God create a human that is kind of has a pointless life here on this earth? He made everybody with their own distinctive qualities. God isn't holding any of those qualities against them. Once again, that is not something that we are supposed to do. Also, we're going to pick up in Acts 10, there, verse 34 and 35, and we'll get to considering one another and devoted to one another as we finish up this lesson next class. I appreciate all your comments. Thank you.